Good day, Engineer Nathaniel Dichu. I am Jade Mindanya Ausa. I am here to present an audio-visual presentation for my output in activity number 9. But first, I would like to discuss the importance in the highlights of Republic Act number 9003, also known as Ecological Solid Waste Management, approved on January 26, 2001. The coverage of the act. In this act provides for an ecological solid waste management program that creates the necessary institutional mechanisms and incentives declaring acts prohibited and providing penalties, appropriate funds, therefore, and other purposes. What is solid waste? First, disposing of garbage or discarded materials. It means the collection, processing, and recycling or deposition of any garbage, sludge, or other discarded material from homes, businesses, industrial, commercial, mining, agricultural, or community activities. This includes municipal and non-municipal solid wastes. 2. 3 R's approaches of solid waste management. It means that they use the 3 R's approaches in solid waste management, and these are the following 3 approaches. First, reduce. Second, reuse. And lastly, recycle. Because for me, it helps save landfill space by keeping useful materials out. The amount of energy and natural resources needed to produce or collect the raw materials and manufacture the product is reduced. The classification of wastes as defined in RA 9003 are the following. 1. Compostable. Whether it's food crops or ends, moldy or rotten food can always be composted. Food soil paper like greasy pizza boxes can be composted, but clean cardboard boxes should be recycled. Just make sure you recycled right. Here are the most common things for your compost: meat, fish, poultry, bones, dairy products, yogurt, cottage cheese, etc. Vegetable and fruit trimmings, eggshells, bread, pasta, and coffee grounds. And lastly, food soil paper and cardboard like pizza boxes, paper coffee filters, napkins, paper towels, brown paper bags, and paper plates. Number 2, recyclables. It means remanufacturing into new materials to be used. Here are the examples. For paper, like office paper, magazines, newspapers, and junk mail. And carbon, grain, clear and brown glass, bottles and jars, juice and milk cartons, and all hard plastic bottles and containers marked but no lids please, and steel and aluminum cans and empty aerosols. Number 3. Special wastes. It is typically a special waste is non-hazardous industrial waste that may require special handling or consideration at the disposal area due to its characteristics. And lastly, for the classification of wastes as defined in RA 9003 is the non-recyclable residual. Non-hazardous waste material that cannot be reused or recycled, it needs to be sent to energy recovery or disposal. Residual wastes includes materials produced by industrial, mining, and agricultural operations. That declaration of policies. 1. Ensure the protection of public health and environment. 2. Ensure the proper segregation, collection, transport, storage, treatment, and disposal of solid waste through the formulation and adoption of the best environmental practices in ecological waste management exclusive incarnation. 3. Encourage greater private sector participation in solid waste management. And lastly, to encourage cooperation and self regulation among waste generators through the applications of market-based instruments. In Chapter 2, from this act is all about the institutional mechanisms. 1. The National Solid Waste Management Institution. There is hereby established a National Solid Waste Management Commission, hereinafter referred to as the Commission, under the office of the President. There are 14 members of government sector that they includes of this act. 1. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources or DENR. 2. Department of Interior and Local Government or DILG. 3. Department of Science and Technology or DOST. 4. Department of There are 14 members of government sector that they includes of this act. Department of Environment and Natural Resources or DENR. Department of Interior and Local Government or DILG, Department of Science and Technology or DOST, Department of Public Works and Highways or DPWH, Department of Health DOH, Department of Trade and Industry DTI, Department of Agriculture or DA, Metro Manila Development Authority MMDA, League of Provincial Governors, League of City Mayors, League of Municipal Mayors, Association of Barangay Councils, Technical Education and Skills Development Authority or TESDA, and lastly, the Philippine Information Agency. There are 3 members from the private sector that they includes of this act. 1. A representative from non-government organizations or NGOs whose principal purpose is to promote recycling and the protection of air and water quality. 2. A representative from the recycling industry, and lastly, a representative from the manufacturing or packaging industry. Additionally, for the Chapter 2 is the Section 7, the National Ecology Center, that there should be established a National Ecology Center under the Commission which should provide consulting, information, training, and networking services for the implementation of the provisions of this Act. Section 10 is rule of LGUs in solid waste management that the segregation and collection of solid waste should be conducted at the barangay level, specifically for biodegradable, compostable, and reusable wastes, provided that the collection of non-recyclable materials and special wastes should be the responsibility of the municipality or city. Section 11. The Provincial Solid Waste Management Board. A Provincial Solid Waste Management Board should be established in every province to be chaired by the governor. Its members should include all mayors, sangguniang panlalawigan, PENLO, Provincial Health Officer, Recycling Industry, NGO, Congressional Representatives, Manufacturing Industry, Provincial Engineer, and lastly, concerned government agency. And lastly, the Section 12 is the City and Municipal Solid Waste Management Board. The City or Municipal Solid Waste Management Board should be composed of the city or municipal mayor as head, with the following as members: Sangguniang Panglungsod, LMB President, Chairperson, Sangguniang Kabataan, Concerned Government Agency, NGO, Recycling Industry, and lastly, Manufacturing Industry. The Chapter 3 for this act is all about the comprehensive solid waste management. Section 16 is local government solid waste management plans. The province, city, or municipality through its local solid waste management boards should prepare its respective 10-year solid waste management plans consistent with the National Solid Waste Management Program, and Section 21, the mandatory segregation of solid waste. The LGUs should evaluate alternative rules for the public and private sectors in providing collection services, type of collection system, or combination of systems that best meet their needs. And lastly, The section 37 is all about the prohibition against the use of open dams for solid waste. No open dams should be established and operated, nor any practice or disposal of solid waste by any person, including LGUs, which constitutes the use of open dams for solid waste be allowed after the effectivity of this act, provided that within 3 years after the effectivity of this act, every LGU should convert its open dams into controlled dams, provided further that no controlled dams should be allowed 5 years following effectivity of this act. For the chapter 4 from this act talks about the incentive here, because for me, the incentive is a form of encouragement to one individual or any organization to promote the proper treatment and every waste, to dispose of the garbage and to the manufacturing and to new materials to be used. For the chapter 5 talks about the solid waste management fund, that for me, it is external development assistance. Lastly, for the highlights of RA 9003 is all about the penal provisions, and talks about here the from section 48 is the prohibited acts, section 49 fines and penalties, and lastly section 50 it is an administrative sanctions. That's all for the RA 9003. For the second topic is I will discuss the RA 9275, also known as the Philippine Clean Water Act, approved on March 2, 2004 by President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. The declaration of policy for this act that the state should pursue a policy of economic growth in a manner consistent with the protection, preservation, and revival of the quality of our fresh, brackish, and marine water. Coverage of the act in this act should apply to water quality management and all water bodies, provided that it should primarily apply to the abatement and control of pollution from land-based sources, provided and further that the water quality standards and regulations in the civil liability and penal provisions under this act should be enforced irrespective of sources of pollution. What is the Clean Water Act? The Philippine Clean Water Act of 2004, Republic Act No. 9275, aims to protect the country's water bodies from pollution from land-based sources or industries and commercial establishments, agriculture and community or household activities, that provides for a comprehensive and integrated strategy to prevent and minimize pollution through a multi-sectoral and participatory approach involving all the stakeholders. For the highlights of the Clean Water Act of 2004. 1. How will water quality be managed? Management of water quality will either be based on watershed, river basin, or water resources region, water quality management areas with similar hydrological, hydrogeological, meteorological, or geographic conditions which affect the reaction and diffusion of pollutants in water bodies are to be designated by the DNR in coordination with the National Water Resources Board or NWRB. 2. Who will manage this area? Management will be localized. Multi-sectoral governing boards will be established to manage water quality issues within their jurisdiction. 3. Who are the members of the governing boards? Governing boards should be composed of representatives of mayors and governors, as well as local government units, representatives of relevant national government agencies, duly registered non-government organizations, the concerned water utility sector, and the business sector. 4. What are the functions of the governing boards? The governing boards will formulate strategies to coordinate policies, necessary for the effective implementation of this act, and they will create a multi-sectoral group to establish and effect water quality surveillance and monitoring. Number 5. How will discharges of wastewater be controlled? All owners or operators of facilities that discharge wastewater are required to get a permit to discharge from the DNR or the Laguna Lake Development Authority. Existing industries without any permit are given 12 months from the effectivity of the implementing rules and regulations or IRR promulgating pursuant to this act to secure a permit to discharge. Number 6. How will domestic wastewater be addressed? The Department of Public Works and Highways or DPWH, in coordination with local government units, will prepare a national program on sewage and septage management not later than 12 months from effectivity of this act. A priority list will likewise be prepared, which will be the basis for the allotment of funds on an annual basis by the national government for the construction and rehabilitation of required facilities. And on the other hand, LGUs are to provide the land, including road right of the way, for the construction of sewage and or septage treatment facilities, and raise funds for the operations and maintenance of said facilities. And the Department of Health or DOH will formulate guidelines and standards for the collection, treatment, and disposal of sewage, as well as the guidelines for the establishment and operation of centralized sewage treatment system. The MWSS and other agencies mandated to provide water supply and sewerage facilities are required to connect existing sewage lines, subject to the payment of sewage service charges or fees within 5 years following effectivity of this act. And lastly, all sources of sewage and septage are required to comply with the law. Number 7. How will the discharge of wastewater be discouraged? Anyone discharging wastewater into a water body will have to pay a wastewater charge. This economic instrument, which will be developed in consultation with all concerned stakeholders, is expected to encourage investments in cleaner production and pollution control technologies to reduce the amount of pollutants generated and discharged. And influent trading per management area will also be allowed. And lastly, rewards will also be given to those whose wastewater discharge is better than the water quality criteria of the receiving body of water. Fiscal and non-fiscal incentives will also be given to LGUs, water districts, enterprise, private entities, and individuals who develop, undertake, understanding in innovative projects in water quality management. Number 8. What safeguards are provided for? All possible discharges are required to put up an Environmental Quarantine Fund or EGF as part of their environmental management plan. The EGF will finance the conservation of watersheds and aquifers and the needs of emergency response, clean up, or rehabilitation. Number 9. What are the prohibited acts under RA 9275? Among others, the act prohibits the following. Number 1. Discharging or depositing any water pollutant to the water body or such which will impede natural flow in the water body. 2. Discharging, injecting, or allowing to enter into the soil anything that would pollute groundwater. 3. Operating facilities that discharge regulated water pollutants without the valid required permits. Number 4. Disposal of potentially infectious medical waste into sea by vessels. Number 5. Unauthorized transport or dumping into waters of sewage, sludge, or solid waste. Number 6. Transport, dumping, or discharge of prohibited chemicals, substances, or pollutants listed under Toxic Chemicals, Hazardous, and Nuclear. 7. Waste Control Act or Republic Act Number 6969 Number 8, discharging regulated water pollutants without the valid required discharge permit pursuant to this Act. Number 9, non-compliance of the LGU with the Water Quality Framework and Management Area Action Plan. Number 10, refusal to allow entry, inspection, and monitoring as well as access to reports and records by the DNR in accordance with this Act. 11, refusal or failure to submit reports and or designate pollution controls officer wherever required by the DNR in accordance with this Act. 12, directly using booster pumps in the distribution system or tampering with the water supply in such a way. 13, operate facilities that discharge or allow to sip willfully or through grave negligence prohibited chemical substances or pollutant listed under RA number 6969 and to water bodies. And lastly, undertake activities or development and expansion of projects or operating wastewater treatment or sewerage facilities in violation of PD 1586 and its IRR. The third topic is all about the Republic Act number 8749, also known as the Philippine Clean Air Act, approved on June 23, 1999 by Joseph E. Estrada. Declaration of principles that the state should protect and advance the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. Creation of policies that the state should pursue a policy of balancing development and environmental protection. To achieve this end, the framework for sustainable development should be pursued. For the highlights of the Clean Air Act. 1. What are covered by the Clean Air Act of the Philippines? All potential sources of air pollution, mobile point and area sources must comply with the provisions of the law. All emissions must be within the air quality standards, and mobile sources refer to vehicles like cars, trucks, buses, jeepneys, tricycles, and motorcycles, and lastly the vans. 2. What are the main principles of Clean Air Act? Recognize that the responsibility of cleaning the habitat and environment is primarily area-based. Recognize that polluters must pay. Recognize that a clean and healthy environment is for the good of all and should therefore be the concern of all. 3. Why was it important to establish the Clean Air Act of 1999? Because it aims to formulate a holistic national program of air pollution management and encourage cooperation and self-regulation among citizens and industries through market-based instruments. 4. What are the penalties for committing violations and penalties of the Clean Air Act of 1999? Failure to undertake clean-up operations willfully should be punished by imprisonment or not less than 2 years and not more than 4 years, and this also includes a fine of not less than 50 pesos and not more than 100,000 per day of violation. Lastly, what is the importance of the Republic Act number 8749, known as the Philippine Clean Air Act of 1999, is that the act provides for the creation of a national program of air pollution management focusing primarily on pollution prevention for the promotion of mass media communication in order to create social awareness and active participation in air quality planning and monitoring. For the last topic for this audiovisual presentation is all about the Republic Act number 6969, also known as the Toxic Substances and Hazardous and Nuclear Waste Control Act, approved on October 26, 1990. The declaration policy for this act, it is the policy of the state to regulate, restrict, or prohibit the importation, manufacture, processing, sale, distribution, use, and disposal of chemical substances and mixtures that present unreasonable risk and or injury to health or the environment, to prohibit the entry, event, in transit of hazardous and nuclear wastes and their disposal unto the Philippine territorial limits for whatever purpose, and to provide advancement and facilitate research and studies on toxic chemicals. For the highlights of this act: 1. The importance of a Public Act 6969 that provides the legal framework for the country's program to control and manage the importation, manufacture, processing, distribution, use, transport, treatment, and disposal of toxic substances and hazardous and nuclear wastes. 2. What is RA 6969 Prohibited Acts? Unauthorized transport or dumping into waters of sewage, sludge, or solid waste, and operate facilities that discharge or allow to seep willfully or through grave negligence prohibited chemical substances or pollutant listed under RA number 6969 onto water bodies. 3. What is RA 6969 Hazardous Waste List? Chemicals that fall within the scope of RA 6969 include mercury, cyanide, asbestos, polychlorinated biphenyls, arsenic, lead, etc. And lastly, for these highlights in this talk is what is RA 6969 guidelines that an act to control toxic substances and hazardous and nuclear wastes, providing penalties for violations thereof and for other purposes. That's all for my output in activity number 9. Thank you and may God bless you.